Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. I hope you all enjoyed your weekend, and a big thank you to my newest Patreon supporters, David and Jim. I greatly appreciate it. So I had to share this lime green Tesla taxi that was found in Chicago. Now, I'm not positive if this is a rare sighting in Chicago, but it seems like it is given the trending nature of this post on Reddit. But if you have any insider information from Chicago, let me know. But had to share it, thought that was cool. And Elon was asked worldwide how many people were roughly working for his companies, to which he responded around 110,000 people. Here we get something on the rumor mill, so let's all tread cautiously, but some of this is from the accountant on the Tesla Motors Club forum, who has historically been, pretty accurate and trusted by many people. But him and some others are now using loading time, so basically the time that it's taking for cars to be loaded onto ships from Giga Shanghai, to essentially estimate these sales figures for the month. Now, this is going to be an estimate or a guess based on extrapolation for August. Yes, August is not done yet, but that's ultimately how they're coming to these numbers, just drawing things out linearly. And the conclusion that they are coming to is about 45,000 sales and exports for August, which would be a huge number, and the first month over 40,000 for sales for 1 month out of Giga Shanghai. They're saying based on these loading times at the port, if the math is linear, then exports from Shanghai in August were about 35,000. Add to that local sales of 10,400, and that would take you to the total of 45,000. And here's the shot of the loading time chart if you want to take a look. And as you can see, the high so far for monthly sales out of Shanghai has been about 35,400. So 45,000 would be a massive number, kind of out of left field. I'm not putting a ton of stock into this, but anything that the accountant is involved in that's being spread around, I think is ultimately worth sharing. And it's fun to speculate, but hopefully we'll have that data in a week or so. And Joanna Kreider from Clean Technica wrote an article about the double standards when it comes to the naming situation for Autopilot and others. I'm sharing it because Elon said exactly, basically agreeing with the article. The sentiment was that people are criticizing Tesla for being named Autopilot, but then, other companies have Copilot, ProPilot, and naming systems that use pilot in it, but they're not really getting any media attention or any criticism for their system. So ultimately, we'll have to wait and see if this ever changes, if Tesla does end up being forced to or choosing to change the Autopilot or full self-driving name. I don't think they will, but we have to remember there's that NHTSA investigation that is going to be ongoing when it comes to Tesla and their handling of stationary vehicles. Once again, over the weekend, seemingly there was another report that a Tesla on Autopilot ran into a cop car basically that was parked on the side of the road at 5 a.m. I believe it was Saturday morning. Minor injuries were sustained by the driver in the Tesla and the other vehicle that was hit. Apparently the cop was out of the car walking and he was unharmed. But of course, this is not great timing for another one of these situations. Regardless of what actually happened, it's just the headlines that people are reading right after that NHTSA investigation and everything else that was going on. So ultimately, once again, we just have to wait to get more information. And look, I would never just assume or place blame on the driver saying, hey, I'm gonna blame Autopilot because I got in an accident, when yes, I should have been paying attention. Now with all of this Autopilot stuff in the headlines, it's going to be much easier for people, anybody that's in an accident with a Tesla, just to say, hey, Autopilot was on, it's Autopilot's fault, not mine. Now, like I said, I'm not saying that was the case. I'm just saying it's something everybody has to be aware of. So hopefully we can get some more information in the days to come. So there's some more news when it comes to Tesla in India, and Tesla is seemingly working with some Indian suppliers for specific parts, which of course would signal Tesla's further move into the area. As you can see, Tesla was in talks with at least 3 companies to source critical parts for its planned entry into the country. We're talking instrument panels, windshields, differential gears, brakes, and power seats, according to the Economic Times. And Bharat Forge, Sona BLW Precision Forgings, and Sandar Technologies are Indian companies that are already supplying components to Tesla. And Tesla Club India on Twitter shared Tesla completed homologation and received approval for 4 of its vehicle variants. Homologation is basically just official approval. They don't have confirmation on any names yet, but they're probably the Model 3 and Model Y variant. And I wanted to mention something here when it comes to the wait times for people buying a new Tesla. A lot of people say that, hey, this is great for Tesla. It signals there's huge demand, which yes, is partially true. Of course, it could be, supply limitations and Tesla struggling to meet demand. demand. But one problem here that I'm starting to see more and more is people being frustrated with these wait times and ultimately not buying a Tesla because they don't want to wait, anywhere from 2 to 6 months to get their car. I actually had one of my good friends message me a few weeks ago asking, hey, what car should I get? And of course, I shared the Model Y and I thought that would be a great option for him. But as you could probably guess, he ultimately did not buy a Tesla because he didn't want to wait until January to get his car. And sure, you could argue he could have just spent an extra $8,000 and got a performance and maybe had his car in a month. But even still, he didn't want to wait a month. He needed a car now. And so not being able to go and have your car on demand like anybody can do with an ICE car, they go to the dealership and walk away with the car that day, it is a limiting factor and ultimately is going to lead to Tesla missing some degree of sales. And obviously this is nothing to worry about. The demand is there and will continue to be there and probably will only grow. But at some point, Tesla's ability to meet that demand or lack thereof will have at least some negative implications in the short term. And Sawyer shared a Bloomberg article that Elon has concerns over the Nvidia and ARM deal. I do want to take a second to get into this because this has huge ramifications in the semiconductor space. So Elon has signaled competition concerns over Nvidia's planned purchase of British chip designer ARM. And both Amazon and Samsung have apparently also lodged opposition to this deal with the US authorities. And the FTC opened an in-depth probe into this takeover. The probe findings are expected in the coming weeks. And Nvidia is likely to seek EU antitrust approval for the $54 billion purchase of ARM early next month. And other companies, including Qualcomm, Microsoft, and Alphabet, have also voiced concerns over the takeover. And while I could make a 30-minute episode just on this topic, we'll just keep it Cliff Notes version for today. So ARM basically designs the chips. They don't manufacture, they have the IP, and they're designing the chips that they then license to other companies to then manufacture. But ARM is essentially dominating the smartphone, tablet, television, all of these sectors. ARM has a huge percentage of the IP in that space, so they are a huge player. So a lot of the world is actually running on ARM technology, but ARM is not a direct competitor to Nvidia, so one may be wondering, well, what's the problem with this takeover? A lot of it comes down to power and the balance in the ecosystem. People are saying if Nvidia and ARM pair together, it's just going to be too much power. And historically, Nvidia has implemented some questionable market practices that would lead to abuse of power, and people are worried about something similar happening in this case where they might take this IP and bring it in for themselves rather than actually trying to develop it and further that IP for the market. And of course, right now, ARM has its own group of customers and people are saying, well, if Nvidia buys ARM, those customers of ARM might be forced out or pushed out if they don't align with Nvidia's ultimate plans and goals. So this deal was actually announced last year, but it's now getting to the point where it's getting to the review stage and the regulators are going to have to make a decision one way or another. And in the next few months, we might have a clear indication of if this deal will ultimately go through. And why is Nvidia looking to buy ARM? Because they want to advance computing further. The future of computing is going to move further from the cloud to the edge. That is what ARM is fantastic at. Where we are fantastic is AI. So imagine the possibilities in putting AI at the edge. And edge computing is basically just computing closer to the actual data source so that processing doesn't have to be done at a remote location. So as you can see, there's going to be a 25-day preliminary review. And if nothing happens in that period, then that would prompt a 90 working day full-scale EU investigation. So I'll cut it off here for now, as this won't have a direct impact on Tesla, especially not in the short term, but it's absolutely something to watch in the weeks and months to come. And Tesla pushed a new software update that is mostly focused on the Model S, but some of these things may come to other vehicles as well. Talking a recalibrated suspension damping algorithm allowing for smoother control and improved ride comfort, which ultimately leads to a higher degree of road connection and more precise control during spirited driving. Also, your vehicle can now automatically park in parallel and perpendicular posts. While driving below 15 miles per hour, the instrument cluster will display a parking icon if it detects a potential parking spot. And while the new suspension damping algorithm is expected to only come to the Model S and the Model X when those deliveries ramp up, the new vision-based auto park is expected to eventually make it to all vehicles. But I will leave you guys with a clip to circle back to the Nvidia and ARM discussion that I think will add some more context to the situation. But please take a second to like the video if you did. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and a big thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.
You mentioned Nvidia. There was a piece of news this morning that doesn't look particularly good for them.
I regard it as very disappointing.
Their ability to close that ARM transaction.
I regard it as disappointing.
The UK saying, hey, we've got some issues. Secretary of State believes, and this is in the UK, by the way, may be the case that the interests of national security, being a public interest consideration specified in Section 58(1) of the Act, are relevant to be a consideration of the relevant merger situation. They're taking a close look at it. It's not officially blocked, so to speak.
No. But that last line, David, sound.
It is what we would say a significant impediment to the ability of Nvidia to potentially complete this transaction right now.
But you know what, Carl, that's amazing about Nvidia? If you go over, and I don't know whether the intervention notice covers this, I have it. If you go over the most recent line of chips, Carl, many of them are ARM. They're ARM derivatives. So maybe there's a Trojan horse here. Maybe, Carl, that the reason why Nvidia went up 140 points is that, merger or not, they have access to ARM technology. And ARM is considered to be superior to everybody. So I continue to like Nvidia here. The deal would be a game changer, assuming it's allowed to go through. Combining Nvidia's terrific gaming and data center platform with ARM's massive smartphone and processor ecosystem. Put them both together, and you have got the undisputed king of the semiconductor industry. But a lot of people are worried here because we don't actually know if they can complete the deal. There are a ton of potential obstacles here, and they'll have to get regulatory approvals all over the globe.